It's such a great pleasure for me to welcome back to the Solution Zone director Robert Greenwald. He is the founder of Brave New Films, and you know him from such films as Outfoxed, Iraq for Sale, The Big Buy, Tom DeLay's Stolen Congress, and Wal Mart, The High Cost of Low Prices. And, you know, Robert, every time I have you on the program, I always say, this has got to be one of the best films you've ever made, and they're always stellar. This is such an important film. Welcome to the Solution Zone. Thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for helping to spread the word, because one thing we know about these films, whether it's Outfoxed or Wal Mart or Rethink Afghanistan or Koch Brothers, that they really don't mean anything if we just make them and the word doesn't get out and people don't screen them and give them to schools and libraries and unions and churches.
When you go through this film, The Koch Brothers, and we were just talking about some specifics with Lisa Graves, you really tie it together well, and it's so interesting because you talk about a number of different areas where the Koch brothers have influence in our college system, in our voting rights, in our schools, in our environment, and they all fuse into each other. I mean, it's almost like, and with that, they also do this. I was fascinated by the way they seem to really have, and I don't think I'm using the wrong word, their claws into almost every part of American society. And I wanted you, Robert, because you began the film talking about Charles and David Koch's father and going back into where his influence started with Stalin.
They're very strategic about the fact that they do not, like too many people do, and people on the progressive side perhaps, only get their attention up when elections 4 weeks away and then pour a bunch of money into inane 30-second spots that nobody will remember. What they do is, as you were saying, they invest across the board. They invest in think tanks. They invest in schools. They invest in judges. They invest in grassroots. They invest in media. And then they also invest in candidates. But that's only a piece of it. And their conservative training, if you will, as we show in the film, comes from their father. It's a long family tradition, and they have taken it to new levels in terms of the money they spent and the way they continue to spend, and quite frankly, their effectiveness.
Oh, they're terribly effective. The response from this film so far, and then we're going to kind of go into it bit by bit, but there's an interesting response from the Koch brothers, and I don't know if you came on the line hearing that part that I was talking about with Lisa Graves, them responding to the work done on Alec. Pretty much they go through the entire film and make an attempt to refute everything, and they're all pretty lame attempts.
Yes, well, they seriously lame attempts. They've been attacking me personally quite strongly, and they've taken all kinds of ads and spending a lot of money because the media is not responding to the smears and the name-calling and the distortions of what we have done and what we are doing. So there are all these Google ads all over the place, and then sometimes when I go on television immediately afterwards, they'll take my TV appearance and hack it and say, you know, this is not accurate and this is wrong. But the good news is, thanks to people like you and your listeners and people all around the country, people are going to the website. They're getting the film, Koch Brothers Exposed. They're screening it. We're having thousands of screenings around the country, from, again, schools, libraries, churches, all kinds of interesting places. And, you know, that you can't stop. People can't stop that. I just saw something today. There's a screen. There it was, I think it was a Pittsburgh newspaper announcing the screening right between an announcement about bingo and the 4-H club. You know, just kind of a perfect way that people are able to go out in all kinds of situations and not just complain, or as my grandmother would say, not just kvetch about it, but actually do something. Because the more people know about the Kochs, the more we put the sunlight on them, and the more we're able to help let them know that all kinds of great groups, you know, Lisa and her work and People for the American Way, and, you know, it just goes on and on, then there's things they can do.
I want to play a clip from the film, and this is with one of the many great people you have in it, Bernie Sanders, talking about just one of their areas of attack, and this, of course, is shrinking government, and this one specifically is with regard to Social Security and the retirement age.
The Koch brothers fund organizations, and you have economists and political scientists working there, and they are very, very good in getting on television.
Raising the retirement age.
I would increase the retirement age.
So you will probably have to increase the retirement age.
We're probably going to have to raise the retirement age.
And people will not know they represent an organization which is heavily funded by corporate interests. They are very effective in getting their positions out into the media.
Should Congress raise the retirement age?
If you raise the retirement age.
Well, raise the retirement age.
Let's consider the options. Let's raise the age. Raising the retirement age to 69.
At the same time, the Koch brothers are putting huge amounts of money into campaign contributions.
Very modest increases in the retirement age.
And eventually getting the retirement age to 70 is a step that needs to be taken.
The age on Social Security will have to go up.
So you have an echo chamber which starts repeating a lot of misinformation.
And Robert, you really exposed this echo chamber early on with your Outfoxed film as well, and it was so effective, and it is here in this instance. I think our listeners can tell how an agenda has been laid out, just because there really isn't even any variation in the way these politicians are speaking, in the way these newscasters are speaking. They have a specific agenda, and they're following it.
Yes, well, that's exactly true, and the important thing about the echo chamber, and I think it's one of the more effective sections in the film, is that, again, what the Kochs do is they fund think tanks, and then you see that they funded these different think tanks who've written over 300 different papers essentially attacking Social Security, attacking the fact that it needs to be changed, providing all the suggestions, as you just heard. And then we show the great research team, Natalie and others spent a lot of time literally finding the words in these papers and then seeing how those words get first picked up by media folks, many of whom the Kochs are paying. Then it gets picked up by grassroots activist folks, Americans for Prosperity, who Kochs are paying. And then you see it ultimately in the mouths of politicians. So that's really what an echo chamber does. It takes an idea, it takes a theory, it takes suggestions, and it essentially makes sure that people all across the spectrum are talking about it. And, it goes back to what David Koch said years ago, and it was in Jane Mayer's brilliant article in The New Yorker, which helped inspire our work. Excuse me. And what David Koch said is, I think this was in the mid-'70s, he said he learned early on that politicians are just like actors, and what they do is they read from a script. And what David Koch, wants to do is write that script. And with the echo chamber, we see a brilliant example of that. He's essentially writing the script by deciding which ideas to focus on, how to message around them, and then to fund the getting out of that message all across the spectrum.
And we were talking in the first half hour about Lewis Powell and about him, setting forth this agenda that really the Koch brothers have basically picked up in terms of infiltrating over a very long period of time a number of different areas in our society. As you were just talking about the media, we also have, education. They've really been a part of infiltrating higher education. Talk a little bit about that. You feature in the film students at universities talking about the fact that in these universities, they are giving grants to the university with specifications that certain things will be taught, certain books will be read, and the Koch brothers' agenda, if they're going to invest in these institutions, is going to be followed to the letter.
Exactly. I mean, we of course all like to think that people fund education because it's a good thing to fund. But what we see with the Koch brothers, they fund often with strings attached. And the strings are such that it is written up in documents. Florida State became infamous because of the strings attached. And because in Florida State, both the faculty and the students objected, saying this is threatening and impacting our academic objectivity by the way the Kochs give their money, and they insist on who the professors are and what they're teaching and how they're teaching, and different schools, they have different strings about what kind of seminars. But it's a real ideological commitment to using public universities or non-public universities to propagate their ideas. It's not about supporting education. And in fact, in their think tanks, they often will attack what we would think would be efforts, laws, legislation, funding for academic world so that it could be more available to more people. They oppose that, and then in the universities that they do support, they try to make sure that their ideology is advanced. Now, I'm obviously totally opposed to it, but that's quite a horrific use of education and their dollars.
And you're going to be looking at a generation that is learning this in school. And, you know, it's interesting, and this is sort of what you've addressed throughout. Again, our guest is Robert Greenwald, who is the director of the new Koch Brothers movie, Koch Brothers Exposed, and founder of Brave New Films. And you've addressed this before. If people are learning, or the only thing they see, you know, many people who just watch the mainstream media or just read the mainstream papers. We did a program just last week about Rupert Murdoch. And you look at this kind of control, and then you see it in the universities, and the books, the very books they're learning from, even though there's this perception that in a university you're going to be taught the truth, is really not the case, and generations are going to come out with misinformation that they think is genuine.
Yes. That's, again, where their ideology has such an impact on people, and this is where conservatives in general understand profoundly the importance of funding a broad-based advocacy for ideology, not a narrow-based advocacy for some candidate who may be good or who may be lousy. So the discussions we were having up until the wonderful work of the Occupy folks were all conversations from a right-wing ideology. How much should we cut? Not if we should cut, but how much we should cut. And that's a conservative frame and a conservative talking point. Social Security is in danger. You know, those are all things that come about because the Kochs and other conservatives look at the long haul and say, we're going to build on these ideas which we believe in, we're going to fund getting them out, and we're going to keep hitting on them day in and day out, year after year, and not sit around and keep our fingers crossed that maybe there's some elected official who will do the right thing.
I want to play a clip from, this is the North Carolina School District, and they went even into this area, the Koch brothers. You know, we talk about them, and people may listen and think, well, you know, they're influencing national politics, and they're influencing things that aren't going to be in my neighborhood. We see, as we were speaking to Lisa Graves, that they have influence in Wisconsin. This is their influence in North Carolina, in the school district there. Now here's the clip.
Not only do they force politicians to do what they want, but they also have a very strong libertarian agenda, which is against the Department of Education, against public education in general, and affects elections and policies at all levels of government, at congressional elections, our senatorial elections, all the way down to local school boards, as we've seen in North Carolina.
We had no idea what the stakes were.
In one election, they now have the majority needed to change the way students are assigned to school.
And don't make any mistake about it. Your plan that you're putting forth today will resegregate the schools.
Resegregating schools. Can we believe that we're in the year 2012? It's astounding how everything seemed to be, moving forward in our country after the Vietnam War, and then we go back again to Lewis Powell and that memorandum he wrote. Everything seemed to be moving forward in terms of people understanding how to work together, understanding about pollution, understanding about racism, and then we've got them able, actually, and you show in this wonderful film, the Koch Brothers Exposed, how they get 4 candidates onto this school board in this area of South Carolina with their agenda, funded all 4 of these candidates by the Koch brothers, and they were able to oust members of the school board who'd been there for a while.
Yes, well, see, again, what they did was they invested in the grassroots, and they invested in Americans for Prosperity, they and their allies, and they were constantly talking, as we point out in the section, in code. Neighborhood schools, which is words, and then we cut showing George Wallace using that same language. And they spent time building up the idea that somehow the schools were being taken away from people. Well, in fact, they weren't.
Forced busing was another one. Forced busing over and over again, out of the 1960s.
Yes. Both those words were code. And what they did was they attacked a very, very effective school system that was known for its success, a public school system known for its economic and racial diversity, and known for how many people loved and supported it. Well, once the word got out that the Koch brothers were behind a lot of this, the good news is, and it was what Lisa was saying before, is, when we fight back, we can and will win, because essentially their positions are not ones that the public embraces. And when the community started to find out, wait a minute, the Kochs are advancing all these ideas, and the Kochs are paying for this and that, and Americans for Prosperity and their ally Carl Pope, it went on to, and then there was a reaction, and people said no, and so there was another election there, and the school board now is in the hands of people who do not have an agenda about resegregating, the majority, that is.
And that's the gratifying thing about this film, because, a lot of this information is very frightening and it is very scary. But in this film, you show several instances of the people in North Carolina. Yes, 4 people got onto that school board, but they were also, as you just said, diselected. They were removed, and the people they wanted were on that school board. We talk about Wisconsin and Scott Walker in this recall campaign that is about to happen. The people at some point do decide to stand up. And I want to play a clip here, and this is another issue that you tackle in the film Koch Brothers Exposed. We're talking to Robert Greenwald. This is environmental.
From the Koch brothers' point of view, you buy yourself a Congress that has single-handedly tried to eviscerate and gut environmental regulation across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to cut and eviscerate environmental regulation. But then, Robert, you tie this into these enormous Keystone XL protests.
Right. Well, it's connected to the protests. It's also important because it's connected to their profiteering. Their ideology, which is no restrictions, no protections for people, very conveniently fits their agenda, which is to make more and more money for their various industries. And many of their industries, they're one of the 10 worst polluters in the country, through Georgia-Pacific. Many of their industries are harming the environment, harming us, but they are choosing over and over again to make a choice for another buck rather than something that might be in service of the greater democracy.
One of the ironies that you bring forward in the film is that with this Georgia-Pacific paper plant that the Koch brothers own that is polluting the water in this neighborhood and causing cancer, this whole cancer cluster in this area, then you talk about, and I can't remember off the top of my head which Koch brother it was, who suffered from prostate cancer and donated a huge amount of money to cancer research, and I think he has a cancer wing named after him, and that was a very weird, I guess you'd call it dichotomy, a very weird juxtaposition between him donating money to the very thing that he's causing, and maybe it's just because it's causing it for people who can't afford health care.
Yes, it was David Koch, and it was one of the most painful sections of the movie. We found this small community, African American, where they are literally, the people on cameras are saying, David Koch, you're killing me, I have cancer, and they show all the people in this little town who are dying of cancer, and then David Koch is giving money to a hospital. Well, the hospital is to make you better once you've gotten cancer, but he will not deal with the fact that he and his industries are a reason that people are getting cancer, and that there needs to be protections, there needs to be investigations. They need to do a whole lot more.
But they won't. Unless we make them. And that,
exactly.
Again, is the whole point of this film. At the end of the film, you show this just long list of producers. And I wanted you to talk about the way that Brave New Films is funded and what people listening can do after they've watched this marvelous film, and they can go to your website, bravenewfilms.org, and take a look at it and download it. And these films are supported by the people.
Well, that's exactly right. There's a two-step support process. One is, in order to get the films made, whether it was this one or, again, Rethink Afghanistan or Out Fox or Iraq for Sale, we reach out and we ask people for help, and people have responded and allowed us to literally go forward, because otherwise the editors and the research and the cameramen and women and all the incredible staff who work on this would not be able to afford to do it. So at the end, there are, I think it's over 3,000 people who gave us anywhere from $25 to $5,000 in order for us to move forward. And so that's always critical. We're on some new projects as well as the Kochs now, and we could use help. We're going to do war costs over the next couple of years. So part of it is funding to get us started, and then part of it is buying the DVD, which allows us to continue to do the work we're doing, and equally importantly, getting the word out, buying it, screening it, giving it to somebody, passing it on, having people into your home, showing it at lunch hour at work, having it at your church, at your union hall.
Yes, and as we wrap up, Robert Greenwald, again, is our guest director of this fabulous film, Koch Brothers Exposed. People can go to your website and do that. If you're listening and you know of a community theater, you know of a university theater, you have a house party, you can bring this film in and show it to a number of people, and therefore cause more people to understand who the Koch brothers are and what we need to do to take our democracy back from this huge power group.
Yes, well, these are the worst of the 1% in many ways. They are the poster figures of what happens when 1% has disproportionate amount of money and power, and when they use it only for their own continued self-interest, not for anything that approaches the greater good. And that's a long-term battle. It's not only the Koch brothers, but the Koch brothers are certainly important ones to begin with, and it's exciting that such a large progressive coalition is working together to call attention to them, to stay on the case, and to say these are the basic inequities, these are the systems at fault in our country, and these are the things that we want to change and improve.
Robert Greenwald, thank you so much again for producing this fabulous film and being with us on the Solution Zone. We're going to go out with a final clip from the movie, and people can go to bravenewfilms.org to take a look at it. And I just have to mention all of your other great films that are on that site as well that they can download and help support your wonderful work. It's great to have you on the program again, and just congratulations on this fabulous film.
Thank you, and thank you for helping spread the word, and thanks to all the listeners and activists out there.
Okay, Robert Greenwald with us on the Solution Zone, and we're going to play this last clip now and kind of ease you out with it. You're listening to the Solution Zone on the Progressive Radio Network.
This is a battle of wills. It's a battle between the Koch brothers and people. People can beat money, but only if we decide to link up and to organize.
And exposing the Koch brothers is the possibility to rebuild an alternative society.
Once we expose Koch brothers, that unlocks the door. We're not going to be fooled anymore